Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our today's webinar session of Experts Talk, powered by Mindray. I am Diptesh Malik, Marketing Manager of Mindray, Patient Monitoring, Life Support and Surgical Units Business Modality in India. Mindray is a global healthcare organization with a vision to better healthcare for all and a mission to advance medical technologies to make healthcare more accessible. On similar lines, Mindray has initiated Experts Talk, as a platform to share knowledge, experiences, and ideas from renowned leaders in the healthcare space. Already, we have seen speakers from various disciplines coming in and sharing their topics of interest with all of us. Today, we are pleased to host Mr. Deepak Agarkhed on a topic which is very close to his heart, which is risk mitigation in healthcare using Anzen approach. He is from Sakra World Hospital. A brief introduction about him. He is an MBA and MBB from Six Sigma background. He is the Associate Vice President of Engineering Services and Facilities and Quality at Sakra World Hospital, Bangalore. He has 25 years of experience in healthcare. He is the ex-technical committee member of NABH for 2 terms. He is ex-appeal committee member of NABH Quality, and he drafted the standard for biomedical engineering as a technical expert for NABL medical devices standards. He's the co-chair for Indian Biomedical Skills Consortium, part of QCI. He's a project member of setting up 4 greenfield tertiary care hospitals in his career. Very prominent amongst them are Bombay Hospital, Indore, ABMH, Pune, Artemis Hospital, Gurgaon, and his present organization, Sakra World Hospital, Bengaluru. Till now, he has procured and commissioned medical technologies over 200 crores Indian rupees. He has secured the NABH accreditation for Artemis Hospital and Sakra World Hospital as quality head in his tenure. He has a number of publications to his name. More than 30 articles have been published in medical trade magazines, and he has contributed chapters into national and international books on healthcare. He has been awarded as an Excellence Award in Biomedical Equipment Facilities Improvement category at an international platform in Philippines. And he also got an award for his Kaizen Global project in hospital discharge process improvement from Toyota Tsusho, Japan. He's a master black belt in Six Sigma from Indian Statistical Institute, New Delhi. Thank you, Deepak, for giving us your time. Over to you now with your topic for today.
Well, namaste to all of you. As been discussing about the risk assessment. So today I would like to take through the process of how to address the safety concerns, what is to be done to mitigate the risk, and what are the tools to be used so that we can have the safe environment within our setup. My presentation is mainly with respect to the hospital background, but not necessarily it can be applied to any of the areas where you are working. But currently my focus is on the hospital where the healthcare delivery is happening. You can see a picture here, a patient having a cardiopulmonary resuscitation, which is happening in one of the intensive care area. You can see another picture of a patient who is on a ventilator at intensive care area. You can see the patient monitors, ventilators, infusion, syringe pumps, all are connected to patient. You can also see an operation theater wherein a patient surrounded by the clinicians and the nurses and the other technical staff, and operation is being performed. What we can see here is the process is there, but is there anything which can happen which can endanger the people? Either it can be a patient or it can be a staff. How to address this? This is what our topic is mainly focusing upon. But to get into that, I would like to briefly touch upon what is a process. As you know, process is a series of steps or actions that lead to a desired output. So you will have a process in various areas, in various departments. I've given some examples like handling the hazardous materials, in the hospital, medication administration to a patient, electrical power generation, which has been taking over from the city power to the DG, or a CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. There are n number of processes in each of the functional departments, and processes are not necessarily to be only restricted to that function. It passes from one department to other department. For example, a process of patient being administered a medicine, not necessarily the nurse will be administering. So it starts with a process of doctor prescribing the medicine being brought into the ward, and then it is being verified, then finally administered. So the various stakeholders will be there. How the process can be flawless, or is there anything which can happen to process? Failures in a process is very much possible. So failures can happen because some of the process are not been steps are not been followed. Here I have given an example in connection with the same earlier slide. Like the non-functional defibrillator is basically happening if you can see the patient process of cardiopulmonary resuscitation. This failure may lead to some effect. So the effect of a process can be fatal. It can be a near miss, or it can be something which can happen severity to the people. Either it can be staff or to the patient. Here in our example, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, wherein a patient is supposed to be given the electrical shock, and when all the team members came, the defibrillator did not work. So unfortunately, we could not revive the patient. So the process has a activity and the task need to be done correctly so that there will not be any faults which will lead to effects. So we need to understand these things before we actually get into the risk mitigation. Now let us understand what is hazard, harm, risk, and safety. As you can see in a picture here, hazard is a potential source of harm. You can see an electrical cable wherein the exposed the cable, which may lead to a shock. So the harm is basically a physical injury or a damage to a health of a people, or a damage to a property. And what is risk is a combination of probability of occurrence of the harm and the severity of the harm. So what we need to basically to see is what is the probability of occurrence of the harm, how probable it is, and if it is going to happen, how serious it is. For example, I am sitting here and a fan is running on the top of me. Now, if the fan is not being properly connected, so there is a possibility that fan may fall down. If the fan may fall down, it may lead to physical injury. Or if it falls not on my head, it may fall on the floor, it may damage. So how probabilities? If it is secure, probability is very low. And if it is not secure, probability is very high. And if it falls on my head, its severity is very high. If it falls on the floor, severity may not be high on me, but there may be damage. So what we would like to know is how is the risk in any of our processes, and ultimately what we need is a safety. Safety is basically freedom from unacceptable risk. Now, in order to have the safe condition and safe action, so we need to know also what is unsafe condition and unsafe action. So unsafe condition can happen in any of the process, maybe because there is a defective machine if the process involves the machine, maybe because the material is defective. Like for example, I have given example, expired medicine. Maybe there is no work instruction or standard operating procedure, or the environment is not conducive. For example, if you have to give a medication, if there is the low lux level, probably we may have to prick the patient again and again. So unsafe condition is something which we need to avoid. Similarly, unsafe act. So if the people who are having a lack of knowledge, lack of experience, and lack of intention to work, so then there is a possibility of unsafe act. So human error can also happen because he or she may be absent-minded, or changing the attention level because of the nature of the work, or they may resort to a shortcut, or there may be something guesswork they are trying to do, which may lead to a problem. So unsafe action and unsafe environment, so both will lead to a accident. So accident basically is an unplanned, uncontrolled event which causes or it's likely to cause an injury. As you can see here, a person who wanted to take something, he is standing on um, on a ladder which is kept on a place which is itself is not secure. So you are bound to have an accident. If I have to put it in a matrix here, you can see here the x-axis says the safe unsafe action. Unsafe action is low at early now and it goes to the high. Similarly, unsafe condition, which is low initially, which will lead to high. If a low unsafe condition, low unsafe action is something which is an acceptable or safe work zone. This is what exactly we are trying to achieve. But unfortunately, we may end up in a situation wherein unsafe condition is high, unsafe action is high, which may lead to a problem. Wherein you can see here an example which I earlier telling. So a patient has been, the code blue team has come. The person who wanted to operate the defibrillator may not be knowing, he's trying to do for the first time. He's not even a ACLS trained. And the defibrillator itself may not be working. So both results into a shock which is not been given to a patient, which may lead to a fatal problem. Similar, we can see another example. Here you have an MRI. The patient is supposed to be inside the MRI gantry where no magnetic materials to be there. So you need to ensure that a patient, when he's taken inside, so he is free from the magnetic material. But unfortunately, I can see in the picture, the patient is inside. Somebody has taken this oxygen cylinder, which is a metallic, which moved like a rocket, and it has hit to a patient, which has created a fatal injury. Again, unsafe action because the person who was supposed to take the patient was not knowing that he should not carry the oxygen cylinder. Here, unsafe condition because the room which is leading to a patient to the MRI gantry was not been closed and it's not been monitored. So both has resulted into a major hazard condition. So we need to know what are the various risks which are going to happen in the hospital. As I said, risk is a combination of probability of occurrence of the harm and the severity. So we need to know what are the different risks which can happen in a hospital. Clinical risk which can happen, patient not been diagnosed properly. Financial risk, patient came with a X as the estimate, and he has finally the final estimate has gone to more than what is been given to him. So it's a financial risk to a patient. Similarly, there may be financial risk to a hospital. Patient was asked to give a X amount, but he is not able to give. Safety risk, when this environment is not safety, so there is going to be a problem. Legal risk, a litigation can happen. A technology risk, which I was talking about, a risk related to MRI. So these are the risks which can happen in the hospital. The risks continue. There are customer related risks. Now there are with the social media being active, there is a possibility that the patient may sue the hospital, which may not be the actual reason. So there may be risk of a data loss or in a hospital where the patient data has been lost, or there may be employee related risk, which may also happen. The risk can be also related to natural or man-made or a hazmat risk. So there are various risks which are present in the hospital. Now we know what is the hazard, harm, risk, and the safety, and the different types of the risk. What need to be done so that we can mitigate the risk? So this is what we need to focus upon. So what is risk assessment is all about? A thorough look of your workplace to identify the things, situations, processes that can cause harm, particularly to the people. So we are interested in knowing what are the various situations or the processes wherein possible harm can happen, especially to the people. It can be a staff, it can be a patient. And then to evaluate how likely and severe the risk is and decide what are the measures to be taken so that we can prevent or control. It's not necessary that all the risks can be prevented, but they can be controlled or it can be minimized. Now, why risk assessment is very important? Because it creates awareness on the hazards and risk within the setup of a hospital. To identify who may be at risk, because some job needs the specific work to be done which has a risk. For example, a person who is working in a CSST on a ETO machine, there is a possibility, there is a risk if the ETO gas is not been properly been curtailed, if it is no insulation happens, and determine if existing control measures are adequate. Now, there is a risk, you need to work, you cannot avoid. So what is to be done? So what is there any control measures are there? If there is a gas leakage is there any alarm coming from a ETO machine? We need to check and prevent injuries and illness when it is done at the planning stage. It's very, very important that when we are planning a setup, so risk level need to be checked. What are the possible failures can happen and how we can look into all the micro levels so that risk can be mitigated, and prioritize the hazards and control measures. As I said, there will be hazards, so we need to prioritize and we need to give a control measures so that we can have a idea of what the thing which is being followed in some of the leading Japanese organizations. The safety basically is a freedom from unacceptable risk, as I was telling. Now, let us look into what can be done so that we can mitigate the risk. So it has a roadmap which has the three major things which need to be done. First is 2S. We'll get into the detail of that, but it's basically to keep the workplace good condition for noticing normal and abnormal condition. As I was telling, in a process, once we see anything, we need to immediately check whether it's a normal or abnormal. So 2S is a method which is being followed. Then second is KY. KY is a Japanese term, Kikin Yochi, basically to train the staff on what is danger, what is risk. Take an example. Two people take a round in a one particular area or walk through inspection. But one can notice a risk or a danger in a particular corridor, but other may not. Why? Because he may not have been trained to understand what are the risk or danger levels, or his skill sets are not good enough to address and develop an eye to find a danger or risk. Okay. So if we find a risk is going to happen, then there is a mechanism called incident reporting, wherein we can raise an incident. Incident reporting is not necessarily that when the incident happens, even if the incident has not happened, which is a near miss condition, so then also you can file an incident reporting. And KY enforcement before the start of the work. Before the shift, any shift, so KY is something which need to be followed. So a typical example is before the operation is being done. So in the operation theater, so we can do a KY. So which is basically as per the WHO guidelines we do. We check whether the same patient, same surgery, same site, and understanding the from the anesthetist and doctors, checking all the equipments, all these things are being done as a part of the KY. And finally, reduction of the risk. So risk assessment is to be done and it has to be measured, and finally come with a process wherein we can reduce or even eliminate the risk. So this has been done as a part of the risk assessment. So let us get into the roadmap to implement the risk mitigation. First is the 2S. As you can see, the 2S is basically a part of the 5S technique tool, which is being used in the lean management. So first S is talking about the sort. Here, if you go to any of the workplace, you'll find a lot of things which are been stacked. Some are needed, some may not be needed, some may be needed later. Is it necessary to keep all these things, or is there any way wherein we can keep only the things which are needed? Again, needed can be a daily use, maybe weekly use, monthly use, and once in a year use. How can we do it in such a way that it can be only the things which are needed are kept, those which are not needed are being discarded. So this is something which it may look very basic, but the basic itself will be missing in most of the places. You'll find any of the workplace, you'll find so many things, especially in the engineering or biomedical workshop. You'll find so many things which have been condemned, but still it's been kept. We feel that it can be used, but God knows when we are going to use it, isn't it? So we need to sort out the things and check what is needed and what is not needed. Then you can put what is not needed in something called as a red tag area, and later on you can check with your manager and finally take a call whether it need to be discarded or it can be kept separately. So sort is something which need to be done on a regular basis in work area, so that you can avoid the clutter and you can utilize the space where there is a constraint. Places like Mumbai, wherein the 2S is one thing which can be easily adopted, so which will lead to a major utilization of the space. Second S is a storage. You can see here the toolbox, a typical toolbox where all the tools are scattered. So is there any way wherein the tools can be kept properly? Is there anything which can be done in a visualization so that we can immediately identify a particular tool is not there? So this is something which can be done as a part of the storage. Storage is a place for everything and everything in its place. Everything in its place means we need to quickly identify whether it is there in that space or not. If it is not there, so we'll immediately get to know. This is more pertaining in the hospitals because hospitals work 24/7 and there are shift changes happens. Typically in a nurse station, there are 3 shifts happen. So each nurse should, before the shift changes, should hand over. If, for example, if a particular key is being kept by one nurse in one place and which has not been known to the other nurse, so then she keeps on searching. What is not necessary, which has been done, is basically called as muda in Japanese, which is a non-value addition, which is not adding any value to the process. So by having the proper storage and identification and ensuring that it is being known to everybody, will immediately keep the things properly. So first is to sort, then storage. So sort and storage is something which need to be done in our work environment so that we identify what is needed, what is not needed, and we keep those things which are needed in a proper way so that immediately an abnormal condition, for example, in a toolkit, a particular spanner is not there, we'll immediately get to know so that the action is being taken. So 2S can be adopted in all the places in our work area. Let us see an example. The MRD, medical records area, you can see all the files which are being inpatient files which are being kept like this in haphazard manner. So 2S has been implemented. Now the files can be kept properly, can be easily identified. Another example is a lab wherein you have the workbench wherein all the items are being kept and we need to process the sample. If it is not in a proper way, there is a possibility that it may delay the process or it may lead to a mistake. So 2S is an example which can be resorted in the lab. So is with the nurse station where so many consumables are there. So we can sort it in a proper way and keep it in a such a that we immediately visualize it. If anything which is not there can be immediately identified and an action can be taken. So the risk mitigation, first step is 2S. I would suggest strongly to all of you to ensure that 2S is being implemented across the hospital, irrespective of the whichever department you are. After finishing the 2S, come to the next step, which is KY. KY is basically again a Japanese word. So I'll be using a lot of Japanese words, but we need to know the meaning. So KY means Kikin Yochi. Kikin is hazard, as we know, we have discussed. Yochi means prediction. And T means hazard prediction training. As I said, we need to predict the hazard so that we can take action, mitigate the risk. So there are various steps in that. So the following step has been performed. Ask what is a potential risk in the area. For example, when the team goes to a particular area, they will ask the team members, what are the potential risks? Then identify the potential risk, okay, so which may happen, and decide what is to be done about it and confirm the solution with a touch and call. So touch and call is a technique which has been used. You can see a picture here. An entire group is identifying the risk in this particular process and trying to see what is to be done. And finally, they are coming with a solution what need to be done. So KYT training is something which need to happen for all the areas by the respective HODs, head of the departments, so that we can identify the potential risk. As I was telling, it's not necessary that a risk, once it results into an accident, we fill an incident report. So that need to be filled in any case. But a near miss can also be filled as an incident. So this is a typical incident reporting form for a hospital, wherein we are identifying the categories of the events and trying to see which category it belongs to and what is the current location from where and what are the details of the incidents so that it can be analyzed. The incident categories can vary from the no harm to a permanent harm to a death of a patient. So currently I'm talking with respect to patient, but it is applicable to the staff as well. So we have identified, we have given a category. A and B are the risk wherein no harm to a patient, but there is a potential if we don't act on these problems or the issues. So A means a circumstances or events that has a capacity to cause an error. Okay, example is corridor is wet between the two wards. So there is a possibility that if a person is coming there and he may slip and he may fall. B type is an error that has not reached individual. Okay, here another example. Before using the wheelchair, it is found that the brake was not working in the wheelchair. So there is no harm because no patient per se is sitting on it, but there is a potential of harm. So we need to identify these things. This is what exactly need to be done when we are having a KY training. You can see here the categories, category I, which is not we want to avoid at any cost, death of an individual. Here, it has reached to a patient and patient has died. So we need to avoid the category G, H, and I. And also we need to look into the corrective and preventive actions for all these categories as a part of the incident reporting. So KY technique basically is divided into 4 steps. You need to look at the object and point at it and raise your right uh, finger, okay, at the right ear, and then bring it and point it. For example, I'll give an example here. Here, before the surgery has been happening in the hospital, the nurse who is within the OT need to check whether all the right consumables or medicines are there. So what she does is she will use a KY technique. She, along with the technician, she will raise the arm and finger, start stating loud on mouth and listening her own sound. Is this particular medicine stock okay? The other person will say okay. Then she will say okay. So why this has been done? You can see a graph here. The percentage of making the mistakes, if you only see by eyes, is around 2.4%. If we are only calling, for example, I'll give another example, oxygen cylinder in the crash cart. If a nurse goes and only sees the oxygen cylinder, probably she may not catch the mistake. If she calls, check the oxygen cylinder, then she points the oxygen cylinder and then she calls, check the pressure is okay within the normal level, then probably the mistake will be less. So this is what has been done by the Railway Technical Research Institute of Japan. They say it's always better to have a calling and pointing instead of only seeing or instead of only pointing. So the KY technique will help us to reiterate everything is okay. This is what has been done in the cockpit of the aeroplane, and this has also been followed as a part of the WHO checklist within the operation theater before the surgery. But this need to be adopted per se with a pointing and calling. So this will lead to a major identification of the risk if it is anything going to happen, and we can mitigate it. Outcome of the KYT. What the KYT will finally lead to? It will increase the risk sensitivity for all the people who are getting training, and it prevents the accident in the near miss stage only. If the oxygen cylinder is not been filled or is empty, we'll get to know before it's been used. Or if the wrong patient has come to the operation theater, we'll get to know. It enhances the safety culture, of course, and everyday Kaizen culture is developed. Kaizen is basically again a Japanese word, continuous improvement. So every day the Kaizen culture is developed because this is not done once. Every shift it need to be checked. For example, every shift, if a narcotic need to be checked, it need to be checked whether the count is correct or not using a KY technique. So this becomes a part of the culture. So risk sensitivity will increase and near miss can be avoided. This is the second stage of risk mitigation. Now coming to the very important stage, risk assessment. So far, we are able to talk about the risk. We are talking about the near miss. How do we measure the risk? Because there has to be qualitative as well as quantitative measurement of the risk. You can see here an example, a lion here, and the lion being is a hazard because it may lead to a harm, it's a potential source of a harm if somebody goes, and a risk can happen because you have a occurrence is there and then a severity will also be there. So there has to be proper distance to be maintained between the human and the lion. Now the risk assessment has again 5 steps. Okay. First is identify the hazards, places or work. So as I said, identification of the hazard condition is being taught to us in the KY technique. If we start identifying our processes and the areas, environments, and try to identify the hazards, estimate the degree of hazard. Okay. So this is something which need to be understood. What is the possibility, severity of the accident? Then evaluate the risk level. What is the current risk level for a particular process wherein we are looking at? And what are the measures to do to reduce the risk? Basically, there will be a lot of risk levels coming in a process. There will be multiple risk levels. Which risk level we need to address first is, of course, based on the measurement, and determine the risk reduction measures and implement it. Okay. So these are the 5 steps which need to be done as a part of the risk assessment. Now let us get into the stepwise. You can see here a lion and a person. So now I'll put the example which you will understand so that we can continue. You have a MRI machine and you have a technician and a patient. You know, MRI is a strong magnetic field. A person should be without any metallic part has to go in. So it is dangerous if a person goes with the metallic part. Okay. So the hazard is there, and we know that there is a hazard condition is there. Then what is the degree of hazard? Now the hazard condition is there. How frequently this hazard condition can happen? As you know, MRI has to be done for a patient, and a technician will be involved on a daily basis, and the frequency will be very high because on a daily basis the patients will come. Same thing may be applicable to the other area, other examples also. So for example, the lion, there is a ringmaster, and he has to go on a daily basis in the circus, and he has to be next to the lion. So the frequency is based on the nature of the work, and the frequency can be put into a points. High frequency, which is happens on a regular basis, is 5. Medium, which happens once in a while, is 4, and a low is once in a year or rarely it happens. So what is the frequency of occurrence of the hazardous condition is something which we need to look into. Second is severity. In case the hazardous condition, if the accident happens, what is the accident degree? One can be fatal injury, which we are given a point as 12, lost in time injury, which is 6, not lost in time is 2. So we have given the grades based on the accident level. So we talked about the severity, and we talked about the occurrence. Now we talk about the possible occurrence frequency. So with the current setup of a MRI machine, with a frequency of a daily MRI to be done, and we know if a person goes with a metallic, there is going to be fatal injury. What is the current occurrence possibility in our existing setup? This is occurrence possibility can be something which can be controlled by us. So we as a team can look into what can be done so that a safety measures can be built into the system. You can see here, high occurrence means no safety measures are there. Medium means the safety measures are there but not adequate. Low means no safety measures. For example, we'll take an example of a current scenario. A COVID patient. If a hospital is taking the COVID patients, the frequency is going to be high. Okay, the patients have to come. Okay, then we have the severity. If we come in contact with the patient, the severity is very high. It may be fatal. And occurrence possibility, if we don't use a proper adequate PPE, if there is no negative pressure in the room, so then the occurrence possibility is also high. So high severity, high frequency, and high the occurrence possibility is something which we need to avoid. So this is something which for each of the process steps we can look into this, evaluate, and come with the risk matrix score. So you can see here the frequency of the risk. Here the feeder have to do on a regular basis. So here we are given the example of the lion wherein somebody has to go and give the meat to the lion. It has to happen on a regular basis. In case if there is the severity, in case the lion bites a person, he may have a major injury or he may even die. And what is the possibility? What is the possibilities based on current condition? In this example, current condition, there is no fence. So he is going with a meat and he is giving it to the lion. So then possibility of accident may happen. So if all these three things are there, so if you add the high frequency, then the lost in time injury, a fatal injury, and a possibility of high, which will lead to a score of 25. So 25 score AA is something we give as a rating, is something which is a risk score, which is something which I need to look into. Is there any way wherein I can reduce it? How can I reduce it? So if you can see, if I have a proper fencing and adequate precautions, probably I can reduce the occurrence of the problem. So this can be done with the team to understand what can be done. So first go through the risk level, and the risk level is high. What can be done so that we can avoid or reduce the risk? As you can see, the risk evaluation score can vary from low to 6 to high to 25. We just saw an example with a score of 25, wherein the risk rank is high and the injury can also be severe. Now, if the score can be something between 19 to 25 for a rank A, if it is 19, probably the injury may not be high. It may be fatal injury. It may be the hand may get injured for a person who is feeding the lion. So it can be AB. If a lion kills the person, then it is AA. So we can go similar to the rank B and rank C. So for any of the process steps, we can identify what need to be the rank and what are the actions to be taken. So this is how the risk level is being identified. So is there any way where we can eliminate something which cannot be eliminated? We need to have a MRI in the hospital. You cannot eliminate it. Can we do a substitution? We cannot, because some of the patients need MRI. Everything cannot be done in the CT scan. Is there any isolation can be done? Yes, possible. Engineering changes can be done? Possible. Is there any proper PP can be followed? Yes, possible. So we need to look into case by case, what is the hierarchy of control. So ultimately, we want to control the occurrence. If we control the occurrence, probably, so we can reduce the risk level. And if you reduce the risk level, so that itself will give a confidence to the people who are part of the process. As you can see here, can we eliminate the job? You cannot eliminate, because in the circus, we need to have a lion. So we can do an engineering by putting a cage, or you can identify it by a danger zone, or you can use a proper PPE. So the reduction of the risk varies from a case to case, and it depends on what need to be done, or it can be combination of many. So finally, we need to implement the measures. So once we know the risk score, we need to brainstorm as a team and see what can be done so that risk can be reduced or it can be eliminated. Let us take an example. It's a hospital kitchen. Okay, so we have the chef who has a grinding machine who has to put a meat in this. Can you see here the grinding machine here? So severity, if a person accidentally puts a hand, he may lose his finger or hand itself. And frequency, it has to be done on a daily basis because it has to serve the patients. And possibility, so there is no protection currently. So if you see, add all these things, rank is AA, which is high. What need to be done? So as a team, we need to sit together, brainstorm, and come with the various countermeasures. So one of the countermeasure can be installing the guard. If you install a guard, what will happen? Severity will still be 12. Okay. So the frequency will be on a regular basis, but possibility of the accident is been reduced from 8 to 1. So it has become 18, that is BA is the risk score. So similarly, another example in an admin department, wherein you have the cables which are coming all over, and there is a possibility a tripping can happen. Okay, a severity may not be the major injury. Okay, so it can be 2 or 6. A frequency, because daily a person has to come and work on the workbench, it has to be on regular basis, and possibility of the occurrence with the current condition is very high, because you can see the cables which are on the floor. So what are the countermeasures can be done? A countermeasure can be simple, proper cable management. So the rank can come from AB to CC straight away. So this is how we can get to know what is the rank and what need to be done. So as a manager, so we need to look at the actual work condition, look at the equipment, look at the operation, look at the workers, look at the risk. Okay. Then implement the measures based on the risk level, and when you are implementing, involve your team so that it has been implemented in totality and the acceptance of the team is there, and sustain it so that the work environment is fit and safe for the people. Now, once you have improved, you need to visualize it. So visualization can be done through a work instruction. Work instruction, which we know as a standard operating procedure, SOP. SOP is basically written on the process, and it covers the individual activities and the task. You can see here the activities are being shown, and the task within the activity has been shown for a particular process. So here this has been taken from the automobile plant example. Okay, storing in the rack. So this is the process, how to store in the rack. So there are various activities. Each activity, there are steps are there. You can see here the key points in each of the activities been mentioned. And for each of the task, there are few things which are being looked into. We call it SQPC, safety, productivity, quality, and cost. So you can see here symbol for the first one, you can see a symbol of a safety. So you need to be careful about the safety. The second one, the symbol which has been shown as a rhombus, which is a quality. So for each of the step, we put SQPC so that safety, quality, productivity, cost portions are looked into, so that minor micro levels are being addressed as a part of the process. So work instruction is very, very important when we are going through the process, and when we are making changes in the process also, accordingly work instruction need to be changed. So if you see in nutshell, the process measures can be taken before the incident can happen. That's a proactive measures. Or incident has happened, a reactively can also be taken. So in any case, we need to take an action. So the incident reports, which will help us to go through the incidents and do a study called as a corrective and preventive actions. So and we need to understand why the incident has happened. We ask the same question 5 times. Why? Then we'll get to know what is the root cause and try to correct it. It is applicable even for the near miss conditions. So let us go through a case study which has happened in my own hospital, Sakra Ward Hospital, Bangalore, wherein installation of the access control and implementation of MRI zoning visualization for enhancing the MRI safety has been done successfully. Here again, the Anzen technique has been used on the Philips MRI, which has been 3 Tesla MRI, which has been used in our hospital. As I was telling earlier, MRI, like a lion, if it is not been properly taken care, we may lead to fatal injury. This is a clipping from the newspaper wherein the death of the patient as well as a technician, which has happened because of the negligence. As you know, MRI is having a strong magnetic field. We need to ensure that till a certain the radius, so magnetic materials should not be brought in. In our hospital, on average, we take around 20 to 25 MRI scans on a regular basis, on a working day. And this will for both inpatient as well as the outpatients. So we have to use MRI, as I said. So the frequency is a regular. Okay. So but here the severity of the issue in case if we don't follow the process. That's if a person enters the MRI with a metallic thing, or if person is inside, if somebody enters with a metallic thing, will be a fatal accident. And occurrence level is what we are trying to see. What is the probable occurrence in our existing setup? In our hospital, we have noticed that I'll come to the plan so that you will understand. You can see a red arrow here. A patient comes here, there is a reception. From the reception, patient is being asked to wait, and then finally patient goes to a MRI holding area, and here the patient consents are being taken by the nurse, and nurse is supposed to check through a metal detector, so whether the patient is carrying any metallic objects. Post that, patient is being shifted from here in the corridor, and he enters here in this area. You can see here there is a door here, and this door leads to two rooms. One is a console room where the technicians and the doctors sit, and this is the room where the MRI machine is there, which we call as a gantry room. A patient is supposed to go. This is the room which we are talking about, wherein we need to ensure that a person goes without any metallic things, or a person who is inside, the metallic object should not reach accidentally. As it's a powerful magnet, it goes like a bullet, and it is going to attract to the gantry. And if a person is coming in between, so he will have a fatal injury. So the scenario has been looked into in our hospital, and what is the consequence if we don't take care. The process can fail at the various levels. Proper checking may not happen at the nurse. The patient is taken here, and there is no monitoring from the technicians who are seeing how the patient is taken in. A person who is taking in a GDA or a ward boy, what is MRI is all about, and he may directly take in. Or accidentally, there is a possibility that there is a problem in the light which is not functioning in this room, and a utility engineering team or a bioengineering team enters here with the metallic objects. So we need to look into what are the various failures which can happen into the process. So the Kaizen idea. So basically Kaizen is continuous improvement. So the idea description was staff, patient and relative awareness on MRI and not having a magnetic object. This is very, very important. The technicians may know, the doctor may know, but not necessarily all the staff. Some of the people who have come from the ward and they are escorting the patients may not know the functioning of the MRI. They may think that MRI can be switched off like a CT scan, so that there is no magnetic strength will be there. That's how there will be perception will be. So in fact, we did a survey before this Kaizen. We found that shockingly, most of the people, paramedical staff, were not even aware that magnet is always on when MRI is not even being used. So then we came with a zoning of the MRI areas as per the American standard, American College of Radiology. There are guidelines, and we tried to come with a visualization of the MRI safety at the various areas so that we know how the patient is to be taken in, and patient should also be aware, and the patient relative should also be aware of the risk which is associated with MRI. And we also installation of the nurse call and an access control before the MRI, the patient entry happens. And we did an awareness campaign so that all the people are aware. And the work instruction has been done so that the people are aware what exactly need to be done. How did you come with an idea? So we came with an access control door for restricting the MRI entry. As you can see in the picture earlier, the common corridor which takes the patient to the MRI and CT scan. CT scan also on average 40 to 50 CT scan happen. So the traffic in the CT scan is also high. The same corridor is there. If there is no proper access control, so there is a possibility that the mistake can happen, so that anybody who want to go to CT scan may even land up into the MRI. And we also try to benchmark with the best practices in the industry. You can see here, the signages have been put, access control has been put. This is the room through which the people have to enter. And this is a common corridor which is leading to MRI and CT. So there is the signage has been put so that people are aware that there will be no traffic of the common people which is happening in this zone. So the steps which have been put is sharing of the unsafe condition and news about this to all the quality champions across the hospital. Hospital has quality champions. Basically, each department is represented by quality champions, and everybody has been made aware of what are the risks associated with the MRI. So this was discussed in the quality review meeting. Then we created the zones. These zones are very, very important as per the ACR, the standards. Zone 1 is a region that includes all the areas in the hospital that are freely accessible to the public. Zone 2 is when the patient enters to the MRI or radiology reception. Zone 3 is basically where MRI console and MRI magnet equipment room is there and transfer is happening. Zone 5 is where actually MRI gantry room, where the magnet is there. The signages for the visualizations have been put. Call bell has been put for the magnet door entry. This is very, very important because the access control has been given to the area to enter into the magnetic zone, but the technician may be busy with the scanning of the patient. So in order to ensure that he knows that a patient has come and is waiting, so the nurse call has been put. And the procurement of the MRI compatible fire extinguisher has been taken. It was noted earlier as a part of the case study evaluation. Some of the places, because of the smoke found in the MRI area, so the people rushed with the fire extinguisher, which was not a MRI compatible. Again, it has led to a major issue. Training was been given, and the regular monitoring, post-training, and auditing has been happening on the new work instruction. So this is how the visualization, big visualization, is been put across the area so that even the public can understand what are the things to be not to be carried, and putting the zones. So, and in a language which is also in a local language so that the people can understand. So what exactly we are trying to see. After installation, there are some more things which were left out. So we have to put on the floor also a danger and a metal detector door, so that even if the nurse who is checking the patient in the holding area fails to identify, in the metal detector we'll get to know what is happening. Now the risk evaluation as through an Einstein technique. You can see here a red, the color where the frequency of the occurrence is very high, as because we need to do MRI on a regular basis. If the patient goes or a technician goes inside with a metallic object, so fatal injury can happen. So it is 12. And current occurrence possibility was there because there was no access control, there was no signages, there was no nurse call. So it was 4. So before the Kaizen, before the improvement, risk evaluation score was 21. So once the Kaizen was been done, so we brought in the sensitization to all the staff members about the MRI, its function, and we also put the signages across. And when the consents were taken from the patients, it was done with clear instruction to them about the metallic things to be avoided. And finally, the control measures of access control and the nurse call has been put. By doing this, so what we effectively did was possibility occurrence has come down from 4 to 1. So after the Kaizen, the risk evaluation score has become 18 from 21. So this is how the risk has been reduced. So we cannot avoid the risk. As we can see, we cannot avoid the hospital multi-speciality with the MRI. So you can see here, before the Kaizen, there was no zoning in the areas. You can see the reception here. You can see the patient holding area here. You can see the console room where the technician sits. You can see the magnet room. So the zonings have been put. So zone 4 is where the magnet is there. Zone 3 is where the console and the transfer is happening. Zone 2 is where the reception and the holding area. Zone 1 is the area which is away from the, which is other than the radiology. So all other areas is zone 1. This is how the signages have been put. You can see the signages, zone 1 clearly identifying, zone 2 identification, so that restriction of the unauthorized movement has happened. Awareness happens to all the staff, especially the lower staff. Lower staff means the GDAs, housekeeping staff, security staff, who need to go on a regular basis. So I can show you a flow of the patient post the implementation of the measures. Here, patient is coming into the zone 2 reception. The patient has been, file has been seen by the receptionist. The GDA is carrying the patient. The patient is being taken to the MRI holding area. You can see the zoning which has been put. So in the holding area, which is again a part of the zone 2, the nurse checks the patient file, sees which scan to be done, and goes through the consent taking process. Through a metal detector, she checks so whether any metallic the things are being carried by the patient. You can see here. From there, patient goes to the MRI area through a common corridor. You can see here the zone 2. And you have the signage for a restricted area. Now the nurse guides the patient to the MRI zone 3 area, wherein again you can see access control. She first press the nurse call so that the technician will come, and then she can use the access control, and a technician comes and patient is taken to the zone 3. Of course, zone 4 I have not shown because zone 4 is where the gantry, where the MRI exists, where the scanning happens. So this article was being published in the Healthcare Radius magazine, and we really felt very happy because we reduced the risk level to a certain extent. So this is how the risk mitigation can be done. So the process is 2S, KY, and risk assessment matrix. There are other various the way of scoring. One is through a FMEA technique, failure mode and effect analysis. Or there is something called as a HIRA, hazard identification risk analysis, risk rating matrix. So there are various ways through which we can do a risk assessment and come with a mitigation. So thank you for your kind attention. As I say, safety first is what we always say. For any of the processes, so you need to look into the safety aspect and come with the risk matrix and see where we stand and try to reduce the risk. So with this, I would hand it over to the team for a question and answer.
Yes, Deepak, thank you so much for your ANZEN, which means safety aspect. And yes, let's stay safe. going forward with a few questions which you have prepared for your content. The first one is risk assessment mandatory in any hospital?
Well, assessment is mandatory not only in hospital, in all the places, but definitely yes, in the hospital, because hospital is where the patients who have come and whose safety is very, very important. The risk assessment is mandatory for all the hospitals which are NABH or JCI accredited. In NABH, so we have the standard on the responsibility management, wherein they need to ensure that proactive risk assessments are being done on a regular basis.
Okay. So next is why process failure happens.
You see, the process is a set of activities which will lead to a particular output. The failure can happen because of various reasons. One is the process steps itself are not existing. There is no SOP. And if the SOP is there, there is no clarity in the SOP. And the SOPs are not being followed. And the people are not simply not aware of the SOPs. So the process failure can happen because of the unsafe act and unsafe condition. So these two things should be avoided so that the failure can be reduced. And other important thing is we need to do a regular audits of the processes. So audits will throw a lot of important points which can be corrected. And certainly mocks can be done on the important critical processes so that we actually know where the gaps are so that we can reduce it.
Okay. So what is hazmat?
The various risks which I was talking about in the hospital, hazmat is basically hazardous materials. In the hospital, there are various chemicals which are being used in the housekeeping department. There are certain chemicals which are being used in the engineering department. We have the patient, the blood or the body fluid. These are also hazardous materials. So we need to ensure that hazardous materials are being identified, stored, then this transportation happens properly, and action is being taken in case a spillage happens. We need to have hazmat kits within the hospital so that in case the spillage happens, immediately actions are being taken. So that risk of the exposure of the hazardous material to the staff or to the patient can be avoided.
Okay. So is risk assessment only confined to clinical area within hospitals, or can it be applicable to many other places as well?
Definitely, it cannot be confined to the clinical areas. It has to be in all the places in the hospital. For example, engineering department. So as you know, the power cuts are very frequent in India. So the hospital, when the full load is going on in the morning, when the operations are going on, the ICUs having patients, so the diesel generator has to take over from the city power. So we need to do a risk assessment whether there is a auto power takeover is happening or not. So risk assessment is not only required confined to the clinical area. Similarly, in the information technology department, in case our hospital information system fails, so is there any way wherein the hospital function still functions? Is there any manual method? So risk assessment can be applied across the hospital irrespective of the area which we are talking about.
Okay. So if multiple people are present, how can KY be done?
As I said, KY is Kiken-Yochi. Kiken-Yochi is hazard prediction. If the multiple people are there, so there is something called as a touch and feel. You may see before the football match or the hockey, all the team stand together in a circle and they will come with some action plan. In similar way, when there is a process is there, so the entire team will gather and then they will all put their hand together and they will come with the touch and feel and say, okay, this is the hazard, this is how we are going to prevent it. So it can be done for a multiple people also.
So is risk level high in government hospitals?
Well, this question is is something which can be answered like this. The risk level is irrespective of the type of the hospital. We have seen the hospitals, government hospital, who have flawless processes in place. The risk can happen because of the 5 M's: man, machine, material, method, and measurement. If any of these things is not been aligned with the process properly, so then there is a possibility of a risk. So it is not necessary that risk is more confined to the is more to the government hospitals. It can has happen in the corporate setup too.
Okay. So where work instructions or SOP to be kept?
Well, the work instructions or SOPs are basically telling about the process, how the process should function. As I keep on telling, process, activity, task, PAT we call. So the process without proper defined activities, defined task, it's very difficult for a people to execute it. So the work instruction or SOP should be kept next to the place where the people are working. We call as a Gemba, where the work is actually happening, rather than keeping in a lock and key by the manager. So we find most of the time SOPs are being written pages and pages, and then it's been kept in a lock and key, never been used. When we are having a accreditation process, then the people will start referring it. This is not the way it should be done. SOP or work instruction should be used in the Gemba. And whenever there is a failure in the process or a near miss happens, we need to relook into the our process and try to make corrections so that our SOP or the work instruction becomes more robust. That's how we can start mitigating the risk in the processes.
Okay. So Deepak, we have taken up few more questions from our audience who are live, who have joined us live. First one is it mandatory to have electrical regal testing 266 for the equipments connected to patients?
Well, uh, the electrical testing you are talking about, so as a part of the NABL, so we need to, for each of the equipments, we need to do a safety test. The safety test need to be passed so that the equipment is free from the electrical, the hazards conditions. So to answer to your question, yes, this it should not be done when the patient is around. So it need to be done before it is being used on the patient, and it should be done on a regular periodic way. Electrical safety testing should be part of your calibration as a part of the process.
So it should be an SOP point.
It should be definitely it's an SOP. So the NABH expects the calibration of the equipment to be done on regular basis, and NABL standards define which equipments, what parameters to be calibrated, including the electrical safety.
Okay. So next question is, how is the capping by Government of India for certain procedures impacting the healthcare delivery system now?
Well, this per se is there is you can see there is a risk which is there. A financial risk may come to a hospital, corporate hospital in this, but whatever the government is doing, the government is conscious about what is being done. So the hospital has to be transparent enough so that the patients and the relatives knows what is the impact of using particular the implants or the stents or any other things which the government is coming up, so that the risk of that is being well informed to the patients and families, and the people can take a conscious call on it.
Okay. So next one is the safety standards and protocols from NABH, JCI. Are they very similar to this ANZEN approach as well, or are there any differences?
Well, as I said, ANZEN is one way. There is a other way, like a FMEA, wherein risk priority number, RPN score, which is basically a multiplication of severity of the problem, occurrence of the problem, and detectability. So there is other way, which is called as a hazard identification risk analysis matrix. So there is various ways through which we come to the quantitative measure of the what is the risk. The neither NABH says nor JCI says you do in this particular way. But what is important is you identify the critical steps, identify the risk level, and come with an action plan to mitigate it.
Okay. Next question is, from the point of view of a technician or a lab attendant or a BME, what are the very common hazardous things which a patient does who is a COVID positive patient in an ICU or in a ward? And how can they avoid these problems?
Well, we as our hospital is gearing up for the COVID preparation. There are various things which we thought, and we have done certain mocks also. So far, we have not got any patients, but a few things which can be done, which will help the people. One is from the infrastructure process part. Try to create a negative pressure environment so that the air is not going to the common corridor. It is being taken, sucked out of the building so that the aerosol particles will not come in contact with. Ensure that the proper PPEs are being put. So there has to be a proper donning techniques to be avoided, and it should be practiced by the people, because you cannot have a situation where the patient is in the ICU and we have patient is the COVID patient is on a ventilator, and a biomedical engineer is being asked to come. There is a problem because we don't have a standby ventilator. So we need to very clearly know how we can manage ourselves with a proper PPE and then get into the particular area. But the point what I'm trying to say is, one is avoid, eliminate as much as possible. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, for example, you identify a COVID area, keep as many standby things as possible if it is available. For example, if there is a requirement of if we have additional ventilators, please do keep the additional ventilator. If the additional accessories, the kits to be kept, please keep it, so that you avoid any movement of the people getting into the COVID area. But if it is inevitable, then we need to go with the proper PPE and ensure that all the safety measures are being taken care. But again, some point need to be looked into. So we need to see how we can do a proper troubleshooting. So what is the technique where we need to go to a detail to an extent where even our screws are being kept, because the entire the area to be properly sanitized, the disinfection has to happen. So all the measures need to be looked into before we address the patients who are into COVID environment.
Okay, Deepak. So next question is, do you foresee any changes in the roles and responsibilities of biomedical engineers post this pandemic?
I can see in our own setup, they are more the cautious. So we need to ensure that any of the equipments which are coming, you normally used to find a suction machine are coming and kept in the bioengineering department. We don't have the proper hand hygiene which has been followed by the team. Now you can see the people are very cautious in whichever hospital it is. So the hand hygiene is being followed on a regular basis, and the PPEs are being used, mask is being used, and also they know that what need to be done to ensure that with minimum intervention, the equipment has been made up. Resource constraints will be there in the hospital. We will not have the more resources, but we need to ensure that the people know about it. They need to know, for example, total productive maintenance is one of the, again, lean technique, wherein you can even train the nurses or the technicians on the error codes, so that the biomedical engineer get to know what is the error, so that he will take an action. Some of the problems can be resolved over the phone. So we see most of the calls may be related to the user. So those things can be avoided by training the users themselves. So these are some of the things which need to be done so that we can avoid the exposure of our clinical engineers or the staff unnecessarily to the COVID patients.
Okay. So next question is, what safety precautions do you suggest regarding the central gas pipeline and cylinders kept near patient?
Well, one of the thing which we have followed as a part of the process is in the COVID area, there are certain things which are movable items. It can be an extension cord, it can be the cylinder, or it can be the patient monitor itself. So we identified with a red tag so that, and it's been trained to all the people across the hospital so that they know if any equipment which is having a red tag which has been found in the other area, immediately a red alert will happen. So we want to avoid these things going out of the COVID zone. At the same time, for the cylinders, what has been done is the cylinders are been taken out and kept at a different place, and it has been cleaned and disinfected before it has been taken by the company who is refilling the cylinders. So it has not been kept mixed with the other cylinders. First, cylinder has been tagged with a red color so that we clearly know this is the COVID area cylinder. So before it goes out of the COVID area, the infection control protocols are being followed so that the cleaning and disinfection is happening. After that, it is being moved out by the person. Again, the same process is followed when the person is taking out. Again, with a full PPE is going and comes to now we have a new the place where the cylinders are being kept, which are been for the COVID area, and it has been clearly informed to the service provider who takes the cylinders so that he knows about it. As far as the central pipeline is concerned, the filters which are coming in the medical gas are being to be checked on a regular basis. And as a protocol, we got to know that once in a year, the filter changing which need to be done is good enough. So we need not have to look into it. But however, as a practice for the engineering infrastructure for the filters, pre-filters and microwave filters, which are supposed to be cleaned once in 15 days and should be put back into our air handling units, we have decided if there is a COVID zone, so we'll be discarding it, but we'll be retaining the HEPA filter.
Okay. So now a few questions from your work experience. First one is, what are the steps one need to take to make a greenfield project affordable, viable, and profitable?
Well, first and foremost thing is the planning which need to be done, and planning has to be done in such a way that it should be done by the third party. So they take the project, the planning. There are various companies who are available in the market, KPMG or so the other E&Y, so or any other companies. So we can ask them to do a project feasibility. Once they do a project feasibility, so based on the project feasibility, I think the hospital, the management, the promoters can look into and check which are the specialties need to be taken in the particular hospital which has been planned. And then we can do a planning. Planning has to be inside out planning, which we have done in our hospital, wherein we give our requirements to the architect so that a lean methodology has been adopted. Lean methodology means the 7 wastes which normally happen, a waste related to a motion of the patient or the staff, waste related to transportation of the things, waste related to inventory piling up, waste related to the over processing. All these 7 wastes are being critically evaluated when we are preparing the zoning of the areas. So we prepare a proper zoning, we prepare a stack diagram so that we know which facility should come where, and the appropriateness of the number of the operation theaters, number of the intensive care beds, and what should be the per square feet the area for the hospital beds. All these things should be looked into from the accreditation perspective, from a safety perspective, from a lean management perspective. Then we should start planning it. I think planning should take major task. So I think around 30 to 40% of the time should be spent on the planning and 60% should be on the execution. Once the planning is correct, I think the execution will be happening and there will be some change managements, but it's okay. So the Greenfield Hospital can be a good hospital if we have a proper plan in place, which considers all the aspects, including the financial feasibility.
Okay. So next question is from MRI procedure. Will a dental implant metal crown have any impact if the Tesla increases in an MRI procedure?
Well, I'm not competent to answer this. Okay, so I have not tested this to answer to you. So I don't want to. I want to skip this question.
No problem. So our last question is very simple. So we all see US FDA, CE, all these certifications. Do you think now India should create their own board for medical equipment certifications?
Absolutely.
And what can be the first step towards it?
The first step is, as you know, that we get lot of equipments from various countries without any standards, and because of only one factor, the cost factor, it has been brought in and it has been used. There is no way wherein we can check. So we find that the equipments will fail, the risk is very high, and it will directly affect the patient. And not only that, the most of the biomedical equipment, the measurements come out of the equipments. The erroneous measurements will lead to the erroneous diagnosis of a patient. So the first thing is to identify the critical equipments, because there are, if you see the complete database of the equipments which has been identified, so there are 5,000 the medical devices are there. So identify those critical equipments wherein we need to look into, then we can further get into the other equipments. Like critical equipments, it can be ventilator, it can be the patient monitor, it can be MRI, it can be defibrillator. So we need to look into what are the safety aspects which need to be looked into, what are the minimum standards to be there. It can be the material standard, it can be the capabilities, it's a technology, it can be portability. All these things can be looked into. So before we come with the standard, it's a need of an hour currently.
Yes. So thank you, Mr. Deepak, and all the attendees of today's webinar. Hope you all liked it. All the recordings can be accessed anytime on our Mindray India website and our Mindray India YouTube channel. Thank you. Stay safe. Take care.
Thank you once again. Thank you for providing an opportunity to the entire Mindray team, and thank you for patiently listening to me. I would finally conclude with one thing, that a safe hospital is a need of an hour in the current crisis, because we may end up in a situation of more patients coming in this situation. If the processes are not good, so we may end up in a major risk. So let us be safe and create a safe environment. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Deepak. Bye.